Here's a guaranteed way to improve your wrestler's level of aggressiveness. A few things that we like to focus on in our wrestling academy and camps and whatnot. Number one, grab some easier partners. We get caught in the chasing workout partners, and I think the misconcept is you're only as good as your workout partners. And I would say that's true a little bit, but if you're a D student in algebra and you're studying with some, MIT students, you have good studying partners, but that doesn't mean you're going to ever figure out what the heck they're doing. Wrestling's much the same way. We would like to say this: half of your points come from moves, half of your points come from instincts, and sort of just scrambling and I guess just mat awareness and instincts. So sure, your instincts can develop by having great workout partners that are beating the tar out of you, but the reverse can also be true sometimes. So if you're only grabbing the most difficult kids in practice, or men or girls in practice, it can stagnate your wrestling. There's nothing better than grabbing a really good opponent, but one that you can, score on, and getting 50 takedowns of practice. Back in the day, my dad, he used to have some muscle cars and whatnot, and they call it blowing out the carburetor, right? You run the engine really hard for a while, let it get really hot, and, supposedly the engine ran better. Now we have electronic fuel injection, so we don't have to worry about that. But, that's what comes to my mind. Just blow out the carburetor, grab some kids, even not just one practice, all 3 or 4 practices this week. Grab easier kids and just let it fly. Get some takedowns. Score off your elbow controls. Dig your underhooks. Wrestle from positions that maybe that you think you're good in, but they don't work against the top kids, because when they don't work against the top kids, you're more likely to kind of back yourself into a corner or go into a shell. So grab the easier workout partners and let it rip. And that's advice I got when I was a wrestler for John Smith back in Oklahoma State back in the day. We like to use the term under-teach, over-drill. And in wrestling, there's too many wrestling moves and techniques. So what we like to do is this, and those of you that do our 24-day challenge, 20,000 repetition camp, you've heard me say this. Write down on about 3 pieces of paper how, the techniques that will beat Iowa State or, OU or a good Division I wrestler. Don't waste my time with anything but what's on those pieces of paper. Then make me drill everything 1,000 times. That's when you're starting to figure out wrestling. In baseball, let's say baseball, or probably basketball is a better example. In basketball, there's one great way to shoot a free throw. And if the free throw doesn't go in, the professional basketball players doesn't say, show me a new move, teach me a new way to shoot the basketball. They say, no, keep shooting this way until you get better and the ball actually starts to go into the net more. So it's about execution, and wrestling's much the same way. But we get in this mindset, we're always trying to look for something new, something new. Now sure, there are thousands of wrestling techniques out there, but a lot of them are things that aren't going to work at the highest level. So in wrestling, and I learned this in Oklahoma State 2 years ago, your wrestling should get a little bit smaller. We want to specialize only in the areas that work and benefit us. It's kind of like the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your success comes from the 20% of the wrestling. And, that's pretty much the approach that we take too. Now in the beginning, you follow our 4-step DVD process on our instructional system technique series. We have beginner, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So, beginner, you're just kind of figuring out wrestling a little bit. We're teaching how to do a stand-up, positioning, whatever, and core techniques. And then in the phase 1, we like to say, 95% of your points comes from 5% of the wrestling. Then as you get into phase 2 and phase 3, we can say, well, there's more than 5% of the wrestling that we need to know. So then we kind of start to get more into the 80-20 rule a little bit. So don't get confused by under-teach, over-drill. It doesn't mean basic double leg, half Nelson, spin drill. It's much more involved than that, but there are way too many wrestling techniques out there, and if you're trying to learn everything, if it won't work in the NCAA Division I tournament, don't waste your time on it, right? So your wrestling should get smaller and you'll get better, because now you're taking your precious, valuable drill time and you're condensing it, and you're only focusing on the areas that actually score points. Another area, number 3, so we have get the easier partners and force yourself on them, and kind of just get your mojo working, right? Get your motor running. Under teach over drill. So instead of drilling everything, just drill the core wrestling areas. Get a good system and drill that. As far as number 3, self-evaluate. Find out where you're good and where you're not. You know, if you can't wrestle from the outside like a world-class athlete, don't do it. You know, Dave Schultz, he's considered one of the best wrestlers ever in America. You know, he didn't score a lot from the outside. He got to a tie-up. You know, Jordan Burroughs scores from the outside. They're both Olympic champions. I guarantee you, if Schultz tried to wrestle like Burroughs, he probably wouldn't have been as good, and vice versa. So it's okay to get a piece of paper and do some self-evaluation and say, I'm no good here. I can't do this. Fine. Avoid those positions, right? So if I absolutely cannot score from the outside, I might take my notebook, where, you know, we encourage everyone to have a wrestling notebook, and the piece of paper that says, you know, how to score from the outside, all the wrestling techniques there. Take that piece of paper out, rip it off, and throw it in the trash. It doesn't pertain to you. You know, Jordan Burroughs doesn't wrestle chest to chest in an over-under, right? He doesn't even wrestle an underhook. He doesn't wrestle from a Russian 2-on-1. He probably might drill those positions on occasion, you know, once a month, but for the most part, he avoids wrestling in the positions where he's not talented. And so I think sometimes we are not very aggressive because we're trying to do things that we can't do, and then when you fail, you get frustrated, and then you go into your shell, and you're not aggressive, and it's all because you aren't organized and you've never engaged in what we call self-evaluation, and trying to find out what your strengths and weaknesses are, what positions that you need to, we call live in. You know, if I'm an underhook guy, I need to live there. I told my kids, you're an underhook guy, you should dig 600-700 underhooks of practice. You need to live there. Now, we drill from all positions because it doesn't hurt to kind of, you know, try to stay kind of multifaceted. But for the most part, you know, 80% of my points are going to come from in-tight wrestling. You know, left or right-handed collar tie, underhook, you know, kind of in-tight wrestling, whereas 80% of, you know, another kid's wrestling scoring might come, he might score more from the outside. So self-evaluation is also the key. So those are 3 good areas there, and they all go hand in hand, and that is a guaranteed way to improve your level of aggressiveness. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, and come check us out at purlerwrestling.com. Come train with us. We have year-round overnight wrestling camps here in St. Louis, Missouri, in our privately owned 15,000 square foot training center on 10 acres. And we have bunk beds, 2,400 square foot game room, 2 wrestling rooms, showers, locker rooms, you name it. So come check us out, and good luck this year.